Hello and welcome back. I'm Austin the Brimstone, collecting all things furry and fantasy. I have a confession I must make. About 6 or 7 years ago, I made the difficult decision to sell my Sonic the Hedgehog collection. I know, terrible, but at the time, the Sonic the Hedgehog action figures were being produced by a company named TOMY. You already know where I'm going with this if you collect Sonic. This line was insulting. These action figures were actually insulting. They were horrific, they weren't that good, and they weren't clear about which retailers they were going to. It was a complete mess of a line. And I was always a firm believer that Sonic the Hedgehog could have an amazing action figure line. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Sonic the Hedgehog has the toy potential that of Playmates Star Trek or Palisades the Muppets. It has such an amazing cast of characters that you could collect and build the Sonic world. And that alone is enough play value to buy the line. And lo and behold, here we are. Years later, I have been recollecting Sonic the Hedgehog through the Jakks specific Sonic line. The best Sonic line ever made by a toy company, hands down. I'm sorry, Rezaris and Toy Island fans. The Jakks Sonic line is goated. It's the best one. And I'm so happy to dedicate a shelf to this amazing line. Now you may notice some holes here in the collection, and that's on purpose because today we're going to be counting down what I feel are the top 5 Jakks Sonic figures. I just want to say I had a really tough time narrowing it down to 5 figures. I was actually going through figure by figure, and I don't think there's a single clunker in this entire line. I kid you not. Even some of the more goofy figures, like the Sonic at the Olympic Games figure, right? The little tie-in one. I thought that was a fun figure. There's no bad figures in this line. I really had to go out of my way and nitpick the small things, like the Rouge the Bat figure, for instance, doesn't stand up on her own. That's a little bit of a drawback. But like, that's such nitpicking when the TOMY Sonic line was horrific across the board. Jakks has absolutely nailed it with this line, and there are no bad figures, so just want to say that first. If your favorite figure isn't in this top 5, just know, well, it's still a good figure, and that's just my opinion, man. Let me know in the comments, by the way, what your top 5 figures are, and we'll see if there's any crossover between our 2 lists. Figure number 5 is Cream the Rabbit, a Sonic character that was introduced in the 2000s. She was a big character in the Sonic X anime, so if you're really into the Sonic anime, this is more of a TV show figure than a game character. I mean, she really has barely appeared in any of the games. Sonic Heroes and Sonic Generations are probably like the only 2. Sonic Advance, right? She's playable in that one. Advance, Generations, Heroes. Those are like the only 3 she really has an actual role in. So I am shocked that Jakks actually picked this character. A while back, Sega used to have these really tight rules on which characters could have merchandise, and if it was considered a B-tier character, like Biggs the Cat for instance, they could not have merchandise made of them. Thankfully, we are past that now. There is new management at Sega that is open to kind of unlocking the toy box of Sonic and giving us merchandise of all the characters. So, Cream the Rabbit is now used in a lot more merchandise. I think they know that she is popular and has kind of a cult following. People that watch that show like this character. So why did I put Cream on this list? I actually have not watched Sonic X. I don't have any attachment to this character. I picked this figure because this may be one of the greatest action figure sculpts and paint job applications I have ever seen. There isn't a single splotch, error of any kind. It is so perfectly applied, and the colors are exactly like the games. I would not be shocked if the designer of this toy actually had access to the Pantone palette of Cream the Rabbit. In graphic design and branding, pretty much every licensed character has a Pantone color, which is a color that's associated with them. So for instance, I like Shrek just a little bit here, but unfortunately, toy companies have never had access to Shrek's distinct shade of green, so every Shrek action figure is a different shade of green, and none of them look consistent or even like the movie. They're kind of all over the place. This figure is color matched to a 10. I am just amazed. It looks like a combination of the video game coming to life and also a urban designer figure. This looks less like a figure and more like a designer toy, and I think it just has to do with some amazing engineering. She is well articulated and all of the joints are actually hidden to where you don't see giant visible joints on the figure. It's just seamlessly integrated into this classic cartoon design. Even if you don't like Sonic and just like cartoon figures, this is a great one to pick up because it's just a nice piece. I would just put this on a shelf as a designer toy and not even a Sonic figure. Even now, when I look at my shelf, this figure stands out as being something truly amazing, an accomplishment from Jakks Pacific. Okay, figure number 4 is Metal Sonic, but not the regular release of Metal Sonic, the Burlington Coat Factory. Well, I guess it's just called Burlington now, right? All the brands are shortening their names. The Burlington exclusive Metal Sonic figure that is vac metalized. I'm a huge fan of vac metalization. Back when I collected Star Wars toys, that's what made R2-D2 and C-3PO such awesome figures, is they were shiny and they had that shiny coating. Unfortunately, as time went on and Hasbro became a much cheaper company and started producing crud, let's be honest, crud, they stopped vac metalizing their figures. But not Jakks. Jakks is still giving us what we want. This reminds me so much of a 90s figure, and he really just pops. I don't know if the camera's gonna do a good job of capturing the shininess of this figure, but wow. What this reminds me of is the shiny look of the textures in the original Sonic Adventure. If you ever played the classic Sonic Adventure, everything is very shiny and glossy. Whereas when the game was re-released on the GameCube and now Steam, they do not have the shiny textures applied. I don't know who removed that feature, but it was a bad idea because Sonic should look shiny and bright, and Metal Sonic just pops. Now, articulation with Metal Sonic is a little tricky. He kind of has these arms. You can see they have the sleeve here, and you can't exactly give it full rotation. You kind of have to futz with him and spin him a bit to get the arms to do the poses you want. But, you know, if you're willing to play with him, he can strike those poses, just may require a little more work than your average figure. That's not Jakks' fault, that's the design itself, having a lot of, like, I guess what Transformers fans would call kibble. It's a Transformers term, kibble. It's like extra bits on the figure that kind of take away from the design, but are just there for robot purposes. But as far as robots go, this is a definitive Metal Sonic figure. Miles better than the regular plain blue release. Get the vac metalized one. It's the way to go. Okay, figure number 3. My favorite character when I played Sonic Adventure 2 Battle with my older sibling was Chaos. I thought this guy was so cool. I was just a little kid and I hadn't actually played the original Sonic Adventure, so I didn't know who this was. I just liked him because he kind of reminded me of a Star Wars alien with like those tentacles. He was given the Kit Fisto vibes, but I liked him a lot, and I do remember playing the game and just thinking, man, I would love an action figure of this guy, but it'll never happen because he's so obscure and his design is so complicated. And lo and behold, there he is. This is truly the kind of white whale of Sonic collecting. I actually never would have put money on getting a Chaos action figure. I just didn't think it would happen. He's only appeared in a couple games. He's a minor villain by all accounts. But wow, what an amazing figure. That complicated clear blue design has been beautifully translated into plastic with a fully translucent figure that is just plain gorgeous. I can't explain how good this translucent effect is. Actually, in order to really appreciate it, you gotta hold him up here to sunlight and watch the sun reflect through the figure. It just, oh, so good, so good. And what's the cherry on top with this figure is his articulation. This guy is not just superposable, he's ultra posable, which is very tough to do with translucent figures because when the figure is fully clear, you can see the joints. So that is an engineering challenge to make a figure that is fully articulated, yet when you hold him up to the sun, the joints don't just start like, you know, jumping out at you. Going back to Star Wars collecting, A lot of Star Wars in this video. I do remember there was like a holographic Count Dooku figure they made that was fully posable. Fully posable clear blue Dooku, because he was hologram, and the figure looked atrocious because whenever you put the figure in a bright setting, the sun just showed all these rickety joints. He looked like a robot. It was horrific. But this Chaos figure, oh, it's beautiful. This is a beautiful figure. My only gripe with this figure, my one problem, he wasn't easy enough to get. This is a very tough figure. And he didn't ship to a lot of stores, and when he did, he instantly sold. This guy should have been packed 2 or 3 to a case. He's a cool design. Even kids that don't know who he is will buy this. Because I was a kid who didn't know who he was, and I played as him in the game, because I thought he looked cool. So Jakks, if you're watching this, I know you watch all my videos, Jakks Pacific, the company, please re-release Chaos. Oh, and re-release the Master Emerald. Whoever decided to pack that with the Chaos figure, that is a terrible decision. That's a horrible decision. Toy Design 101. When you have a big accessory that is integral to the storyline that everyone wants, you pack it with a clunker figure. This is a well-known fact. Good accessories always come packed with the dud of the wave. I would have stuck that Master Emerald with Tommy B, because Tommy B's small, nobody wants him, but you have to make him. So include the Master Emerald with him, so he'll sell. Chaos is gonna sell without a giant cool accessory, but as it is, that cool accessory just makes the figure all the more desirable. Figure number 2 is Rusty Rose from the Sonic Prime TV show, the Netflix show. If you watch this show, Rusty Rose is a charming character, but I fell in love with this design from the moment I saw the trailer. I am a diehard fan of the original 1990s Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon by Deke Animation. It's so dark, it's so wonderful, and it's got such a great story. Whenever I see Sega go out of their way to reference or kind of pay homage to this cartoon, it makes me happy. One of the things of that cartoon that never quite took a foothold in the modern Sonic canon is the idea of robotization. That's where the Sonic and his friends are kind of tormented by Dr. Robotnik and turned into evil robots. But the Sonic Prime TV show did give us Amy Rose in an alternate universe where she is captured by Robotnik and turned into his robot slave. A very dark concept that I did not think would get an action figure, yet here she is, shipping only in the second wave of the Sonic Prime toys. Man, this figure was tough to track down. I wanted her so badly. I can remember getting up in the morning and going to GameStop by my house every day to see if they had this figure. Finally, they found one in the back. Each store only got one of this figure, making her very tough to get. She was shipped a second time to Macy's department stores, and that is notable because I have a bit of a exclusive tidbit to share because I have not seen this reported anywhere. But that's that the Macy's version of the Rusty Rose figure is actually updated from the original GameStop release. The figure has been improved. Hello from the editing room. Hopefully this works this time, but for whatever reason, the differences in the Amy figures don't seem to capture well on camera. I swear if you saw these figures in person, you would be able to see how vastly different they are. This is the original release that was at GameStop, and this is the Macy's release that's available in the kind of Toys R Us toy department they have set up. So, if you look at the head, you'll see the biggest change, and that's that her color of pink skin is totally different. The original release has a much darker pink and darker mohawk. The new release totally lightens it up. And then, see how the eyebrow is just a little off on the original? Fully smooth with the new one. It's kind of less gloppy looking with the paint. Now let's look at the mouth. You'll see the original release has a seam that goes across the mouth. You can kind of see a little bit of it there to the left. And this seam is on all of them. I have a carded example that also has this seam. The Macy's release, seamless. No seam at all. And then the neck, the original one, the neck just does not tilt up and down. It's just swivel. And then the new one, she can look up and down. Not by much, but enough that when you put them on a shelf, this one always kind of looks like she's looking down. And then this one looking straight forward. And the final change, and I can't really convey this on camera at all, is just the plastic. The original release feels a lot more brittle and harder, whereas the new one is a little softer, and the joints are much looser. So this one it's kind of tough to explain. The original one feels more premium, but also like it's gonna snap, a bit more like a NECA figure, whereas the new one is much more toy-like, and you can get easier movements, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna snap. So I actually much prefer the new one over the original release. I can say, wow, what a stunning figure. Everything I said about the robot metal Sonic also applies here. Even though she isn't vac metalized, she does have a glossy finish over her that gives her kind of a shine, most noticeable in the fists and hands, and it just makes the figure pop. It also makes the non-robot parts stand out. When all of the robot version of Amy is given this beautiful shine, and the last bit of fur and flesh she has left is not, it kind of shows how little humanity is left in her, how much of her was turned into a robot, and what remains of what was once Amy Rose. A very dark figure indeed. Readers of the Sonic comic will remember the multi-year-long, gut-wrenching robot storyline where the heroine of the comics, Sally Acorn, was turned into a robot and forced to fight Sonic. That was kind of a fan-favorite arc that never got a proper ending. I think Sonic Prime almost went with this storyline just to give fans closure on that story. What would happen if the love of Sonic's life was weaponized against him? And I think Sonic Prime did a really great job with that. So, Rusty Rose is a classic new Sonic character. I'm so happy she was turned into an action figure this early on. We didn't have to wait years. I feel like if she didn't get a figure, this would be one that fans would be petitioning for. Every time Jakks would hold one of their Q&As, there'd be that guy in the comments, "Where's Rusty Rose?" Well, we did get her, and the figure is so damn perfect, I don't think we ever need one again. Just get that variant, because it's much better. Before I move on to number 1, I have to do some honorable mentions. That honorable mention being pretty much the entire Sonic Prime line. I'm holding 9 here, the alternate version of Tails. It's also the bad guy. And I really wanted to add him to the list, but he just couldn't beat some of those special figures. He's super articulated and detailed, and each of his claws has articulation. And I just think this line has such an amazing value proposition. The Sonic Prime action figure line is the best, most affordable action figure line on the market. These figures are 6-inch style Marvel Legends figures for only 15 bucks. The Sonic fans are really enjoying these figures, but among the greater toy collecting scene, I follow many toy sites that, go over 6-inch action figures, Marvel Legends, Motu, Turtles. You always see those lines held up in such high regard, and I just can't figure out why Sonic is not. The Sonic action figure line is just as good as the NECA Ninja Turtles. They really are, and they're only a fraction of the price. You could buy any of the Sonic Prime figures, and I think you will be very impressed. But that leads me to my number 1 Jakks Sonic figure. And for number 1, Shadow the Hedgehog from the Sonic Prime line, a figure I didn't even plan on buying. I figured they've made many Shadow figures over the years. This is a skip, and I can focus more on the unique characters like Nine and Rusty Rose. Well, I never saw this figure, except once, and I just thought, well, I'm probably going to regret not picking this up because of how rare he is. And I'm glad I did, because I actually never saw this toy again. I only ever saw him once at a GameStop, and that was it. And I am so glad I bought this figure. This is miles above every Shadow the Hedgehog action figure ever made. Dare I say, the definitive Shadow the Hedgehog toy. He is not specific to Sonic Prime, even though he is from the Prime TV show. It's a very faithful version of the Sonic Adventure 2 Shadow. And if you've longed for a fully articulated Shadow figure, this is the one to get. A while back, Jazzwares made the Superposer Shadow, which many fans believe was the definitive version of the character, but I can say this one is much better. The joints are much more seamless. He is uber articulated, yet the articulation does not take away from the design. like the Superposers one with the big kind of ratchety joints he has. Also, his quills are huge, and Shadow has big quills. I think a lot of the Shadow figures cheap out and give him small quills. Not this one. The bottom of his feet are detailed with painted hover jets, an integral detail, because many of us are going to pose Shadow with a foot up in the air, because that's how he skates, you know, with his air shoes, right?
They're air shoes.
Such a small detail that really shows that they're not just designing good toys for kids, but also collectibles for collectors that know the poses we want to put the figures in. There's another detail about this figure that really blew me away, and that's the positioning of his hands. One hand is in a fist, which is a classic Shadow pose. He's always going to be clenching his fists because he's angry. But it's the second hand that really got me, in a trigger holding position. Most of the Sonic Prime figures have plain hands or closed fists. Why would they give Shadow a trigger holding position when he doesn't come with an accessory? So he can hold a gun. This is a reference to the 2006 game Shadow the Hedgehog, where Shadow wields a giant machine gun. That is how we want to display our Shadow figures. This figure looks awesome with a 6-inch machine gun in his hand. I used the Fortnite gun. Even though it's not accurate to the game, I like that the colors matched Shadow, and I just think it looks fun. But I've tried many different guns, and they all fit in Shadow's hands, and give people what they want. A definitive Shadow the Hedgehog figure that can be from the 2006 game, from Sonic Adventure 2, or Sonic Prime. I think Jakks did an amazing job with this toy, making him versatile, and making him the ultimate version of Shadow. When Super 7 is trying to do their Ultimates figures, which kind of come up short, it's kind of embarrassing that you can go into retail and buy, ideally, if you can find them, a $15 Shadow figure that is better than what Super 7's producing, better than what NECA is producing. This is a collector-grade action figure, sold at retail for $15. I have to hand it to Jakks. My only thing with this figure is, like Chaos, I don't know why he was packed one per case. This is Shadow the Hedgehog. Forget the Sonic IP itself. Shadow is one of the most popular characters in popular culture among young kids. Kids love Shadow. 20 years ago, kids loved Shadow, and even today, little kids love this character. He spans generations because he's so edgy and cool and dark. You know, the villain always gets the better part. That's what they used to say in melodrama days, and I think that's true with Shadow. Even though he's not really the big bad of Sonic, obviously Eggman or Robotnik is, Shadow is the edgy villain. He is the bad boy. He's the villain everybody wants to be, and he appeals to everyone. He's such a fun, cool character. He's got a tragic backstory. He's just great. And with the Sonic 3 movie coming out this year, I think Jakks is going to be unprepared for the demand for Shadow product. Now, obviously they will make a new Shadow figure based off the movie design, but I think it's a real disservice to not have a game Shadow available to the fans. This figure should have been released in higher quantities. He should have been packed 3 per case, and he should have been in every assortment. He was only available in one lineup of Sonic Prime figures, and that absolutely baffles me. This figure should have been available in more avenues, more than any other figure on the line, this one. But anyways, that's enough of my rambling. Those are my 5 favorite Sonic the Hedgehog Jakks figures, a line of action figures that is just awesome, and aside from the distribution problems, offers us amazing figures at amazing prices. I hope Jakks is the licensee for Sega for some time to come, because they are truly making the best Sonic the Hedgehog toy line ever made. And I do anticipate that if you came back to me in a year or two, my top 5 figures list would be completely different, because they are hitting it out of the park with such amazing releases. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.